So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background into how Be Braver came about. We're actually at a really exciting point now, really, because the business is kind of like developing into two core strands, one of them being a collective which is going to be very much specifically created for women, and then there's going to be the institute, which is much more about organizational learning and development, a whole host of new tech solutions and all that kind of stuff. So we are geared up now and ready for scale and awesome bigness, so it's a very exciting time. Why do we need to be braver? Why did I start Be Braver? So the world is changing on a constant basis. Okay, so society changes, organizations change, our roles change, we change. The only constant thing that we really can predict with absolute certainty in life is that change is coming. That's kind of like probably the only thing that is certain. And what we know is that change brings uncertainty, uncertainty creates risk, and risk creates fear. And we all know that we are wired for a fight, flight, or freeze response in the face of fear. So these fears that we face these days mostly are conceptualizations or predictions that our brains are making on a host of what if scenarios. So they're based on assuming outcomes that are often based on decision making, or we make decisions based on things that are very often outside of our control, and we focus not on the things that are inside of our control. So seldom do these what if scenarios actually manifest themselves in reality, because we often tend to veer to the worst case possible scenario, and that's why we're induced with fear. So we're therefore making avoidant decisions on the basis that things might happen and that the bad thing might happen, which means that we are limiting our growth, opportunity, and potential. So we tend to act on all of this as if it's the worst case, not the best case. And obviously the impact for this is impacts on us as organizations, as societies, communities, leaders, as individuals. It means that we tend to play it safe, and what suffers in that scenario is growth, creativity, and innovation, because we're avoiding taking risks. And in the very worst case scenarios, we'll suffer because it can create conflict, it can create anxiety, burnout, overwhelm, loss, decline. We can literally like shrink and wither away. So to flourish and to create, to deliver on ideas, to grow, we know that we need to take calculated risks. We need to learn to be comfortable with uncertainty. We need to be motivated, and we need to know that we are what we're seeking to achieve and why we're seeking it. So that in actual fact, the greater risk becomes doing nothing and nothing changing and staying the same and all things reversing. So that environment, that sort of reality of living in change and what that means and how we respond to it and how we face risk, fear, you can't, I mean, in my research on courage, you actually can't be courageous, or you can't be brave in many instances without there being uncertainty and risk, because otherwise there's sort of like no gain there in a way. Not to say that we just wander around pointlessly being courageous and brave, which is why it needs to be linked to a motivation or a purpose or something that you're trying to achieve, an outcome, a goal or a target or whatever it might be. So we live in an uncertain, changing world. That's one thing. The second reason why women specifically need to be braver, and I'm going to pull no punches here, sex matters, being a woman matters, and our experiences as women matter. We live we exist in a society where bias and discrimination and the subjugation of women affects us all. Whether that is you're carrying trauma related to experiences that you've had because of being a woman, whether it's in reality you're the only woman in a boardroom in your organization, whether you've suffered mentally, physically or emotionally, or you've been discriminated against, or you've been marginalized. There's the endless list goes on. But the reality of it is that impacts you from a whole host of reasons, and manifests itself in a whole host of ways, but it also impacts on us psychologically as well. And that can really significantly shape the way that we see ourselves, our place in the world, our opportunities. One thing and another, which I really haven't said yet. Anybody in the Be Braver Collective this week will know I keep saying it, and I keep trying to stop saying it, and I've done really well. I only just did it then. So what I think is really important for anybody thinking about working with Be Braver and how you engage with Be Braver, the organizational route, or what I'm going to be starting to call the Be Braver Institute, is in some respects differs most significantly from the fact that the Be Braver Collective is obviously designed specifically for women, to create a space where we can safely and comfortably recognize and create space to understand how those power structures and systems that basically have been designed, around women serving their labor to the patriarchy for time and forever, to recognize that we carry unconscious bias towards ourselves from a lifetime of absorbing all of these messages, and that impacts who we are and how we behave and what we should aspire to and what's good for us. And actually, even, and I'm, I consider myself to be pretty clued up feminist, even I find myself running into things and beliefs that I'm carrying about myself or the world. And there's a lot of guff, quite honestly, that we don't even realize that we've absorbed, that we need to kind of like unpick and unlearn and catch ourselves on, and realize actually that a lot of the stuff that we that's holding us back isn't necessarily us, and it might not necessarily even be the organization that we're working for. It can be bigger societal structural stuff. So I'm very interested in making sure that we create space and opportunity to recognize that, which I think is probably what differs, well, one of the things that differs about the approach for the way that I like to work with people and what we do within the Be Braver Collective. So it's designed with that specifically in mind. It puts that center stage, I guess, and it means that I've wanted to make sure that we've created a space that's safe for women to be able to discuss those things as and when they're relevant. And the final thing that led to Be Braver and the model and the framework, I guess, is that we've advanced our understandings of human beings through social, cognitive, behavioral, neuropsychology, all the different manifestations of psychology, like significantly. There's tons of research on it. There's loads of theories, there's lots of tested interventions, and you'll see a lot of it being practiced in clinical practice. But applied psychology gives us tools with which we can operate one of the smartest systems that exists on the planet, which is our minds, which is our brains. And yet all this knowledge and all these sort of like hacks and golden nuggets and operating instructions and little secret magic ingredients that can shift us from being an ordinary existence to an extraordinary one. It's all sort of like sitting in surgeries or on shelves in academia. And what I wanted to do, after finding myself at an utterly despondent and miserable period in my life, was to piece together all these best practice pieces of thinking, models, framework, knowledge, research, and create something that would be able to equip and teach people practically how to be a better leader, how to be a better person, to live a more fulfilling life, to not be held back by fear, to recognize discrimination and limited thinking and make peace with things that have happened, and be able to connect to the power and the you know, infinite amount of resource and courage that we have to make change happen, because we all individually and collectively need to make massive changes in society for the betterment of everybody. And that can be small individual actions, and that can be big collective ones. But my original thing was, if I can just create this and it makes a difference to one woman's life, then I will die a happy woman. But then actually what I really quickly realized it was something that not only could be taught and practiced, but that could have a huge and a massive impact to the lives of loads of people. In an absolute ideal scenario, I'd have it taught in schools if I could do, because I just don't understand why we have to struggle through and learn the lessons the hard way, when so much of this stuff can really massively change our experiences of how we deal with adversity and, you know, crisis, and how we can also embrace opportunity and create and put our ideas out there and be the change that we want to see in the world. So that's kind of like a summary of like the thinking behind it, why there's a space that's specifically for women, why it can also work in organizations, because it's ultimately all about how you overcome risk and manage uncertainty and fear and create change. And it also hopefully goes to some way to explaining why I talk about being your own hero, because one of the gothy narratives that we, well, certainly the older ones of us have grown up with, all these Disney narratives around, you know, men in white horses coming in and the hero comes to rescue the bloody damsel in distress because she can't fend for herself. You know, and all I absorbed that for a long while. I was always like thinking I needed something else to, and that's why I talk about being your own hero. There are no heroes coming to the rescue. You are the hero of your own life, and you can create amazing things for yourself in this world. The very early draft of the Be Braver model was actually based on after I'd first discovered the suffragettes, and started to try from a psychology perspective to understand what was the difference between somebody extraordinary like, you know, the suffragettes or Caroline Pankhurst or Sylvia Pankhurst or whatever, and somebody like me. And that was the very early draft of the Be Braver model. And actually there's nothing extraordinary about them. They had clarity, they knew what they stood for, they knew what they cared about, they knew what difference they wanted to make in the world. They had so much purpose, drive and motivation, and that's one of the critical things in order to help you have courage and choose confidence and all those sorts of things, because you know your why. They had confidence in they had self-belief in themselves, they had strategies, they had skills, they had expertise, they knew what they were lacking and they found it from the places that they needed it. They had connections to networks, peoples, cheerleaders, an army, all the things that like that, you know, and they had flipping, you know, courage and resilience, the risks and all the things that they were able to overcome and put themselves through, because they knew exactly what they were trying to accomplish and why. And we can all have a model of that. We can all practice that, learn how to be resilient, learn how to take risks, learn what limiting beliefs are getting in our way, find clarity, find what our meaning is, ask ourselves the difficult questions about what do I actually really want, not what I've been told I should have or told what's possible for me. Yeah, so you can basically just do anything. So that's the conclusion there. So I've waffled on a bit now. So yeah, so you've got 3 ways that we can work with you in an individual capacity. All of the people that join the Be Braver collective get part of our online community. I've totally even forgotten to do my slides. Look, I'm so useless. Do you want to see a slide of the, there you go. That's what the model looks like. That's what the program's all structured around. So there's like eight pillars, and that's what we develop and design everything around in businesses if we do stuff bespoke. Different ways that you can join the community as a community member, where you come to group coaching stuff that we do every month. There's the program where you go in a cohort with other women and you'll become an accredited Be Braver practitioner. And then there's obviously coaching as well, where people work with me on a one-to-one basis. And then if I'm at capacity, then there's other coaches that I have accredited as Be Braver coaches that you can work with there. This here just gives you a demo of the online community, which we also have an app for. It's available on iPhone. The Android one's just in development at the moment. You can come in here, whichever route for membership you have, you will have access to this. I've had to blur some of it out, obviously, because of privacy of what gets shared in here. But whether you actually go down the route of working with us from an organisational perspective, or you want to join the Be Braver collective, we use tools like this on either way. So you could potentially look at having one of these designed specifically for within your organisation, or if you join the Be Braver programme, obviously you will have access to the Be Braver collective, and we come in here every day to share learnings, ask for advice, find out about events that are happening, get all of the login details, support each other, share our wins, ask for recommendations, whatever it might be. So it's a very alive, very supportive, very secure space that's just for our members. So it's obviously an invitation only for people that are subscribed. And if you're a practitioner or a coaching client as well, then you'll have a closed community for the cohort that you're in, or a particular space to communicate with me or your coach if you're doing one-to-one coaching, so that you can keep records and actions and progress reports and all your materials in there. Whether you want to benefit from working in a network of peers externally to your organisation, or to create a closed cohort, or in fact to open up the Be Braver programme to your entire organisation, we can offer a technology-based solution to build a Be Braver mindset in your people. We do still offer coaching solutions with myself, spaces permitting, but depending on your company's requirements, we can design and deliver you a bespoke organisation-wide solution which gives individuals wanting to invest in accelerating growth in particular areas the ability to do so on their own time and their own pace. So the most effective way of developing a Be Braver mindset is to create a language and a framework that everyone in the organisation understands, and that's where the transformation will make its most big impact, when it's adopted as part of the culture. So that's from leadership all the way up to future talent. We offer video training tutorials and worksheets so that people can complete them in their own time, with access to an online community platform that could be closed and distinct for your particular organisation, which makes sharing a much easier way to offer everyone the benefits of the programme and creates a learning community that fosters psychological safety. Our unique Be Braver model, centred in applied psychology, offers technology-enabled learning and development community-based platforms. It's scalable, so you can start with teams and roll it out to the organisation. We can facilitate individual and group coaching. It can foster psychological safety. You will have Be Braver accredited practitioners, and it's also self-paced learning and development. That's it in a nutshell. I practice what I preach. I also face risks, fear, uncertainty, take calculated risks, but I'm committed to being a change maker, to being creative, to growing, to being innovative, to finding solutions, and to making the world, organisations, teams, individuals, communities a better place. We are all ordinary people capable of extraordinary things, and Be Braver equips you with everything that you need in order to find your extraordinary.